Hello and welcome to Ups and Downs, the podcast that shares successful and failure stories from the Nordic entrepreneurial scene. Today in the studio we have Toni. How are you feeling today, Toni?
I took the morning flight to here Oulu, in need of caffeine, but
Okay.
otherwise okay.
All right. Do you mind introducing yourself briefly?
Sure. So Toni Pienonen, that's the name. I'm partner at Crazy Town. We are a co-working community innovation hub.
The oldest in Finland?
Yeah, probably oldest in Europe actually. That's still working.
How old is that?
We turned 20 years.
20?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a long story how we ended up here.
How you ended up in Crazy Town?
Well, I'd say first of all through various loops and random encounters. But yeah, to cut the long story short, originally I'd say I went to study business in Jyväskylä, probably for the reason that I didn't quite know what to actually do. Like just getting some general thing, and also having this kind of, I would say, curious mind, but also at the same time a bit maybe this kind of undirected energy at actually like wanting to do something but didn't quite know what to actually do. So went to do my exchange studies, came back to Finland. Also, of course, learned a lot about myself during that time.
You went to Netherlands?
Yeah, to Netherlands, to Maastricht. A really cool moment like in life, and all in all, a very good opportunity, I would say, to learn about oneself. When you're of course, you've also been living away from your home country, so it kind of gives you a different perspective at things. So yeah, but then I came back to Finland and it was like, again, what do I do? So I went to do this to a student organization. We did a lot of events, volunteer events, organizing events.
Which one?
ISEC.
ISEC. Okay.
Yeah, so bringing in international trainees to Finland and bringing Finns to internships across the world. And of course, it's we did a lot of events. So organizing events is a bit like crash course on entrepreneurship. You have lots of ups and downs when doing events, like in business life, and yeah, organizing chaos. So did that. We had a really great team in our board. So really realized that, hey, I want to actually do something with other people around me. And fast forward, I then ended up meeting the Mikko, or actually two Mikkos who were at Crazy Town back then, and kind of started, found that we clicked really nicely, and kind of made my position there in a way, creatively.
Yeah, I met you through Startup Express Pre-Incubator program here in Oulu. You and Mikko, you were part of the mentors and facilitators. The people who were running the entire program combined with the people from business, Oulu, too. So do you mind sharing a bit more about it, how you decided to execute Startup Express Pre-Incubator? Now, today we're finishing the second cohort. There is the demo day in around 3 hours starting. Do you mind sharing?
Sure. So I'd say by going back maybe to give context. So Crazy Town. So even though we are a co-working community, we have those 5 locations of our own across Finland. But I would say for us, this having the space is just one part. So space brings people together. Then we have the people in one place. It's our job to really make those connections between people, give them that social capital, and then we do all sorts of projects, programs to help people then grow. And in a way, this Startup Express here in Oulu, it's not a normal Crazy Town operation, but one done in collaboration with Business Oulu and the whole ecosystem. But of course, we do take those elements from this normal Crazy Town activity and bring them here. And we, of course, why we wanted to, of course, do this is because at least we feel that giving this kind of having people around you, they're it's so important when you are, whether you are just an entrepreneur who is starting his or her path, or even if you're a established entrepreneur, you kind of need those people around you.
Yeah.
And that's what we kind of like also want to do here is we have the program that's about like 100 days long for idea stage startups and teams, but we also have that like in addition to the program we have the space, we have all sorts of activities. So yeah, I would say it's in a way this kind of miniature version of Crazy Town.
What are you expecting from today's demo day? Do you have any expectations? I don't know how many teams are going to pitch.
We are expecting maybe around something from 10 to dozen teams. There is just like last minute cancellations because of sickness, but like, what am I expecting? Of course, it's a snapshot of the big picture of the journey they have been doing. So you don't see, of course, the whole path. Like it's what I'm maybe looking forward to is actually how they have changed from what they were like 3 months ago, and what have they learned, what have they realized when going through their journey. Hopefully, I expect and hope they have done that testing with real life customers as much as possible and getting the feedback. So yeah, all in all, looking forward to hearing how the progress has changed.
I mean, very interested. Also, do you have like, or are you planning to do like a program who is like the next stage after like Startup Express Spring Incubator?
Yeah, we actually we've been running them, not in Oulu, but like we've been running few programs on our own around Finland, like and online. We've been calling it actually Finest Lab from Crazy Town. So that's one of the programs we do. Unfortunately, in Finnish. Let's see, like how we want to do that also in English.
How long is it?
It depends. We've done one Finest Lab that was only 3 months long, and the ones that we have been currently doing, they've been about 9 months or so.
Okay. So, and you're starting from like idea stage or from already formed teams that have some traction?
Well, the beauty of let's say Finest Lab is that we wanted to offer it for teams and businesses that are young at heart. Okay. So we kind of like because in Finland you don't necessarily have that much, or in any place you don't necessarily have that much teams and enough necessarily participants in different programs. So we wanted to actually do this in a quite open way, so that you need to be young at heart. You can be established company looking for new direction with new product, new service, or you can be a startup that already has maybe some traction, has the company established, but is still like in the early phases, and everything in between. So we've like wanted to for young at heart companies looking for new direction.
Another question, as like you're the second guest that I have from Tampere. What are the main differences between Tampere and Oulu? I know that you're not spending that much time here in Oulu, but in the last couple of months at least, you've been coming quite often, I would say.
Maybe, and well, not just Tampere, but all of Finland. I would say, let's say Oulu has, I would say like, that's a good question. Like I'd say here in Oulu, maybe some of the teams are more ICT focused. So you can see that like Nokia background still there in the background. Also this kind of telecommunications and whatnot. I think maybe in Tampere it's a bit more heterogenic. Like you have teams from all sorts of different backgrounds. So I'd say like that's one thing, and also. But like other than that, I think like both Tampere, Oulu, Helsinki region startups, what's common here is that they are very internationally oriented, which is good because in some places in Finland you might still have the local startup scene is perhaps like too Finland oriented. Because I think like overall startups, and it's actually good like when we talk about startups, I think like we should, like, in very strict sense, you should think that startup is a young company look with its own product or service, going for scalable global markets. Like if you really like think like sometimes in Finland we talk about startups and mean like all kinds of young companies.
Yeah.
But if we really want to use this kind of strict definition, we should really.
There is a misconception when it comes to what is a startup, and it's exactly.
But of course,
mixed with.
Yeah, but of course, like I'd say like what all these places, whether it's Tampere, whether it's Oulu, if you think about the local startup ecosystem or the scene, me, Mikko, and others at Crazy Town, sometimes we see it as a funnel. Just like in a sales funnel, you have to get those deals, you need to have leads. To get leads, you need to have awareness and so on. But same goes for startups. So you can think of that it's a funnel, and on the widest part of the funnel in the beginning, you need to have this kind of mindset, startup entrepreneurship mindset, this kind of culture building activity. From that, you generate those early stage pre-startups. Then you have startups, then maybe scale-ups, and so on. And it's a funnel still. And I think it's really good here that in Oulu, there's been like in the past few years, there's been once again like this kind of, let's say, bottom-up community building going on again. Because I think what COVID did for many startup ecosystems across Finland was that when people couldn't meet each other, there were no face-to-face events. That kind of like really disrupted, this kind of, and because it still needs this kind of proximity between people meeting. So once you move that from the equation for some time, what happened that like we might be like, I think like compared to what it was maybe pre-COVID, it was in some places a bit more active, this startup scene. And now, like for example, what you and others at Oulu AES are doing, it's super important that you are really creating that, bottom-up culture building.
I think the AES are like something exceptional here in Finland, and the idea of exporting the model is also great. I'm looking forward to see how this will go.
Hey, tell more. So what you like?
I think, Peter Westerbacka. I saw a post recently before this. We had like some talks, and the idea is people from the ES's active members to explore the model, how it operates, how it works, like in different countries. Maybe help with starting, and then basically give control to the local young people. And I think it's exceptional, like how it's community driven, it's self driven, it's like student driven, and the fact that there is like so much support like from organizations to the ESs is also amazing. Is Tampere ES active as of now? I'm not quite sure.
Tampere ES, in Tampere it's a bit different situation in the sense that let's say like 7 years back, Tampere ES was not that active. Some active individuals set up this entity, also NGO called Tribe Tampere, to really, let's say, connect communities around them to give this kind of influx at things. And so Tampere ES was maybe, speaking from the sidelines, not so active. But now it's actually, to my knowledge, they've been actually restarting their activities and especially focusing on the in the university especially. So I guess it's making its comeback. But like what you said, let's say this idea about from peers to peers kind of atmosphere, it's so important that like people, whether it's students, whether it's those active community builders, that they have agency around what they are doing. Like and it's their own thing. So because in a way, again, it's a crash course also for them for building the business. So it's something that like, and usually they have like this kind of volunteer-based organizations. They also have this freedom to do to design and implement things.
Yeah.
Like if you look at official structures, they are more tied with all sorts of things. So all these ES actors should really make use of this freedom.
I was going to ask, can you elaborate more on what Tampere tribe is exactly? Is it again how many people are there, and if you know?
I don't know the latest figures, but Tribe Tampere nowadays they are more established organization, still an agency, but they do get support from the city and other actors there. So they've been but they are one of the key community builders in Tampere. But there's also what I think is good about Tampere, good about also Helsinki region, meaning Helsinki, Espoo and such, is that you have also a lot of room for different actors. Yeah. And it's important also, we see these ecosystems from this, let's say this kind of community point of view. You need to have those like both private ecosystems. You need to have volunteer-based communities and ecosystems within that regional ecosystem. You need to have a lot of different actors. And it might seem that, can't we, say that, hey, it's the responsibility of this and that. No, it's you need to have this kind of competition, competition at the same time, but cooperation at the same time, because it's in the end ecosystems, startup ecosystems really benefit from having multiple actors engaging. They might be doing occasionally it might seem that, hey, their activities are competing, but hey, it's really, I think it's a sign of a really, let's say, energetic ecosystem that you have, all these actors doing things. And in Tampere, what they have been really, what's good is that you have a lot of critical mass, so you have also room for different actors there.
I was going to ask too, and what is the common space that they're gathering? Is it platform 6? I heard about it.
Yeah, there's one, again, there's multiple spaces.
Okay.
So of course the platform 6 is one of the epicenters of startup ecosystem in Tampere. Then you have, of course, the university, especially in the former technical university part, has its own multiple spaces, also for R&D intensive activities. Then there's Crazy Town in Tampere, right in the city center as well. We have also a few other co-working communities there. Our competitors, but that's also a good thing that you have a lot of competition, because everyone creates their they create the demand at the same time. But so there's only few of course epicenters.
And what is the current state of the Finnish startup ecosystem in different cities? Where is it now, and what's the projection?
Ooh, big question. Big question. I don't know if I have all the data to really give an official version, official here, saying here. But I would say, as I said, COVID did bad things for some of the ecosystems. So I'd say some are maybe others that were more active throughout the COVID. Some were not. So they're rebuilding things. So it depends a bit. But overall, I think all the ecosystems need this recognition for this mindset stage, culture building activities. It's super important because it's kind of we might have so in some places we might have, let's set up this accelerator program, but why do you need an accelerator program if you don't have those startups? Okay, you need then the, let's say, incubator or pre-incubator program. Okay, but still, what if there are no teams for that? You need this community building activities to get those. So it's kind of this kind of everyone is linked to one another. But still, it's hard then for, let's say, this kind of fund, like if you're like this kind of some person responsible for funding these activities, to really measure, okay, so why do we need to invest in this kind of events, activities, meetups, hackathons and whatnot, because they're just kind of like a bit vague here. So it's kind of, even though they are really the fuel for everything. So I would say like all these activities, ecosystems in Finland need maybe a bit more emphasis on the early stage stuff. At the same time, let's say probably the most advanced ecosystem is probably the one in Greater Helsinki region. You have like, let's say Espoo, for example, which has a lot of focus, especially on deep tech, research-based startups that are really like this kind of solving big, wicked global problems with this kind of emerging technology. And it's so weird, like you have their satellite startups, and they are actually building their own satellite startups and launching them onto space with SpaceX. We have few in Finland, for example.
Really?
Yeah. And they were like, so it's kind of like literally like out there, sky's the limit for them. But like there you have a lot of this, because there's of course critical mass. You have those also in Oulu as well, for example, or Tampere. But of course, like since you have a lot of more like people, that kind of like creates this critical mass. And there, on the other hand, which is more maybe mature in the sense, there I've heard, for example, that then there's not enough then programs and services for scale-ups. So we produce quite a lot of, Finland on average produces quite a lot of startups, but they don't necessarily become scale-ups. So maybe increasing those number of those startups that really perform. And for that, I think we need more international connections. Like still, maybe some of our startups in Finland are maybe too more focused on Finland, Finnish market, even though they should be going from get-go to global markets and global needs. So maybe really leveraging this a bit more. But of course, if you then again think like, it's not still there's this really, Tommi Witti, he's a startup expert, like from Tampere, has been doing a lot of startup surveys and has been really active on the scene. He actually said it also quite nicely that, like according to his data that he's been actually gathering from all over Finland, and at the moment we are recording this, he's also wrapping up his study here in Oulu as well.
I feel it.
So, well, like overall, like what he has realized through the data is that first of all, startups don't necessarily fail as often as this kind of general misconception is. So that meaning that they don't go that often, they don't go bankrupt or anything. But rather, what happens is that they might change their business model and become, let's say, startup might become this kind of a agency, for example, or consultancy. And still, it's a business that runs, but doesn't necessarily become a scalable business. But still, is that a failure or a success? Probably not a failure, because still the person has managed to create something, has managed to maybe create jobs for him or herself and his or her family and well-being for that, and maybe jobs for others. So still, that's not a failure. And of course, like once you learn, what he also, Tommi, realized through his studies is that people end up actually setting up again other companies. Like that's pretty common, that then even if their first startup doesn't necessarily work out, they will maybe set up another, and that's more likely to succeed. So you kind of need to keep the wheels spinning, so to speak.
He's coming today, right?
Yeah, he's coming.
Okay.
He's going to showcase some preliminary results, but so you should definitely. He's what's good is that his studies that he's been doing, they are open to the public, so open data. So anyone can go check out, for example, his studies from Tampere and Turku ecosystems.
I think he's doing one for like Oulu.
Yeah, he's now doing one for Oulu.
Okay. I wanted to ask what advice would you give to your younger self?
Oh, trust yourself a bit more.
Trust yourself. Okay.
That's like have that confidence.
Okay.
And that's I think like something I maybe learned, especially during the exchange period, like studies. Yeah, or like have more confidence, and that's like what I at least like see, especially in startups. Like that's also I think like important. Like it's interesting to see for idea stage startups and those who are maybe thinking about entrepreneurship that they need to be more confident, like when they are pitching themselves and on the stage, because they don't need to downplay themselves too much, and having that, so be more confident.
Confidence is key. Okay, and another one that you probably saw it in a previous talk, but how would you make Finland a better place?
Well, I would, actually, maybe continuing with that. Let's say that Finland tends to still have, of course, this that like there's a lot of these sayings that you shouldn't, that are more or less different phrasings of. Don't try to achieve try to achieve too much or you will fail big. So I would overall like say this that like giving people confidence in realizing, trying and realizing their things, and really maybe in some cases doing some things different. So because we are maybe in some cases a bit risk averse as a society. We don't like, actually the former ambassador, U.S. ambassador to Finland, Bruce Orek, he once said that, quoting Game of Thrones, that winter winter is coming always in Finland. So like that means that like I guess it's like stems from the history that you couldn't really take certain risk too much, or you risked not having food for your family for 6 months of snow, cold, and darkness. So so that maybe kind of is related to not always being willing to take certain risks. So in some cases, maybe do those risks, and do we have sometimes courage to also change things? Like because we might be like we have so many structures of things, like this kind of legacy built in certain things, so it's kind of hard to change like small things, like so as opposed to, let's say, in the discussions I've had, let's say in Estonia and Estonian startups, it's very different out there, where of course like the whole society was built really from, like of course they had a good foundation, like stemming from their when they first became independent, after the First World War, but still, of course, they were interrupted due to Soviet Union. But then, when they regained their independence, they were really able to create certain things from the scratch. Of course, they don't necessarily have certain elements there because of not having that legacy, but still, it's in a way maybe gave them a bit more freedom to do those things that without this previous weight. And it's quite interesting to see how maybe their startups are maybe more aggressive than Finnish startups.
What do you mean by that?
More ambitious. Again, and they are immediately going for those global markets, because Estonia is so tiny country otherwise. So they are really more like internationally oriented, because like for some Finnish startups, they really start from the local markets often. So that's maybe taking certain things from our southern neighbors, learning these things. I'd say like that's especially because I would love that Finland. There's also this kind of gloom and doom talk quite a lot, especially with the current economic situation. So again, maybe having this kind of restart on that mindset that not everyone is doom and gloom, not everything. It was actually, we had this, because in Crazy Town community we have about 400 member companies around Finland, from freelancers to startups, scale-ups, and corporate teams, and everything between. We just did this member survey, and there we always ask about their orientation to growth. So it was, if I remember correctly, this is something you might need to edit, okay. But like if I remember correctly, it was about 80%, 90% of our member companies who were, despite like economic situation being like this, were saying that they want to either grow their business or seriously grow their business. So really not unlike like as opposed to other. And I think like this kind of mindset around you kind of changes your perception on how you also react to things. So you kind of need, and in usually in situations like this, there's always been those that create their market for themselves. So you shouldn't like just necessarily stay put, but be active, be proactive.
Yeah, speaking of Estonia, I was first there like about year and a bit ago. January last year, and I was shocked to say the least. I didn't know much before this about Estonia. They're so digitally advanced. I feel like that they were on the internet wave from the beginning, and yeah, for me it was a bit like how you can basically set a company there within 15 minutes, like online. You can pay literally like all your taxes online. You can vote online. And for me, this was a completely new dimension. I wasn't expecting this, especially from Estonia. As I told you, I didn't know much about the country, but based on the size, I thought that they weren't going to be like that advanced. I was more than happily surprised and impressed of what they're doing there. Yeah, I'll be going to Tallinn in May to Latitude 59.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's I've never been there myself to Latitude, about 59, but that's like I hear so many good things about it. And if you can, definitely try to visit some Estonian, let's say, co-working hubs.
Do you have anyone on mind? I don't know much.
For example, Lift 99.
Can you repeat that?
Lift 99.
Okay.
It's established by former Pipe Drive alumni. It's pretty cool. They have it's in Telliskivi, this kind of up-and-coming creative neighborhood. And the space itself is, well, nothing, like very ordinary. But what's really special there is they have, for example, this Estonian Hall of Fame of startups.
Okay.
There you have,
unicorns.
Yeah, unicorns and such. And it's like super cool there that like they are there because those who founded those companies, the co-founders of those companies, and have done the exits. So they are like part of that community in the background as mentors, and really investing their own time and social capital there. So it's very
cool,
very tiny and like supportive community there. They have really good community management style as well. Like we're like in here in Finland, like we sometimes think that because there's not that many organizations like co-working communities like Crazy Town in Finland, to be honest. Like we are a bit like weird in that sense that like most of the co-working hubs in Finland, they're quite small, so they have like just one city, but not like, and that's it. Or then there's a few others, but they are mostly owned by real estate players, because we are stemming from entrepreneurs to other entrepreneurs. But in Estonia, you have also Lift 99 with the same idea and mindset that so please
I'll check them out. I don't know, should I write in advance or
I can give you the name. They might be of course quite busy during the event Latitude, so
I'll be there at least 1 day in advance and 2 days afterwards, so we'll spend some time in Tallinn. Cool.
Well, it's it's quite different. Like it's, for example, like in Finland, usually these kind of places are then a bit more support, which is great. We have the public sector here in Finland supports startups and startup foundation a lot. But it's again in Estonia, it's more private sector bottom up from entrepreneurs to entrepreneurs. So that's I guess a bit like again, but it's also with not having necessarily certain resources, but you still have that like same this kind of supportive mindset there.
In Bulgaria, the situation is similar as Estonia, like not in terms of like the startup ecosystem, but more like that the private sector, the companies, startups, unicorns, they are supporting the ecosystem, and yeah, that's great. That's great.
It is, and I think like what's cool about like it's quite universal about startup ecosystems in general, the communities that people kind of help each other, like on average quite nicely, at least as opposed to maybe some other giving back, as opposed to maybe some other business ecosystems. And I think like it's partially because like in the end, like communities are always around by people, from people to person to person. They are not like run by organizations, and I think that's like especially for anyone who might be listening and think, hey, how do we set up this community of our own? Never do it like with like thinking from the perspective of the organizations, but like through people, because everyone is people, and people are the ones who collaborate, and it's really coming from, I think, the most important thing that Crazy Town, for example, and other places like Lift 99, for example, provide is the social capital. You know, having that social capital, you know, connections between people, relationships between people, that's the currency of the future for anyone, but especially for startups and founders, because once when you have that high social capital, that means you have also trust. Having trust really makes a lot of things also cheaper, like more effective. Like you don't have to like spend your time thinking, oh, do I trust this person or not? Like things just work. And also through this social capital, knowing someone, you kind of have access to human capital, their skills, or financial capital as well. So, for example, you can ask me, do I know this person? I'm looking for this funding. Oh, I have a connection. I can do the intro and such. So, you know, using that social capital. And the more you have this, the better usually these things work. So,
great.
So do that, create that, and that's like why we need, communities and bottom-up activities.
I was going to ask you about an event that's taking place in the upcoming months, and you're excited about, and you would recommend to the listeners, viewers. Is there like any concrete event within the next couple of months? It shouldn't be in Oulu or Tampere, like wherever. Maybe one event that is sometimes not on everyone's radar as much as Arctic 15. So it takes place in Helsinki. So smaller than Slush, but more target, less. Because Slush is great, but there's a lot of hangarounds there. So Arctic 15 is more about startups and investors meeting. So I would maybe highlight Arctic 15 if I were to just like pick one. I'm just like myself, I'm nowadays really bad at doing any like participating in events, because usually either I'm busy organizing events myself and then I just need to have this downtime. Enough. And maybe one event as well in Espoo, they are organizing. We collaborate with this Ukrainian Finnish entrepreneur and company. They are organizing event in Espoo where they bring Ukrainian IT developers to Finland. So if you have any Finnish startup or company looking for ICT talents, they've like shortlisted the best Ukrainian IT companies who can or interested in working with Finnish companies. So they bring this kind of developer access. When is that taking place?
If I remember correctly, May 30th, so end of May.
Okay.
So in Espoo.
Great.
So that's maybe for those who are looking for developers, those Finnish companies and startups.
And I wanted to ask you too about like a book recommendation. Well, it shouldn't be about entrepreneurship. Like, what's your favorite book? Like, to start from there, and like, why?
I don't really read professional. I love reading, but I mostly read either sci-fi or like non-fiction books. I don't really read business or entrepreneurship books because I write so much stuff, during the like work hours that I don't want to think about.
Yeah.
So, but like maybe one book like that is actually about like related to entrepreneurship and such is Startup Communities Building an Entrepreneurial Ecosystem in Your City by Brad Felt.
Mm-hmm.
He's actually one of the co-founders of Techstars. And it's a book where he details his own experiences of setting up the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Colorado, in a town about the size of Oulu, and how they ended up co-founding Techstars and like what it needed, and especially so really good points there. Maybe one, if I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of going through those sci-fi books, maybe this book by Colin Woodard, 11 American Nations, or something like that, because it's a super interesting book if you ever want to understand about why USA works like it works. So he goes into really interesting exploration of these 11 different regional identities in US and how they were actually formed and why are things like that, and really gives you good understanding of, let's say, why certain US voters vote certain some ways, or why, let's say, West Coast is tech oriented entrepreneurship place and so on. So really interesting book on that. Really helps you to understand US especially a bit better.
Great. Thanks for the recommendation. Is there anything else that you want to add, share?
Well, I think like we pretty much covered this. Of course, like if you are, whether you are of like founder, co-founder, whether you are like just a student or anyone else like looking for, like wondering about like whether you should pursue your business idea or career or anything in life, I would say like, I think like, again, going back to COVID, what it did is that it taught us too much that, we can just like be at our own home and like you look at the screen and, go to Zoom or Teams meetings and such. Sure, but please go out of the building, get out of your home, go to events, meet those people, and leave your especially to those events where there's not necessarily this kind of strict agenda, but that are more about like just people meeting, sharing things, ideas, thoughts, meetups. Like go to these kind of events a bit more. I've noticed that like we kind of like not really careful about like, oh, do I bother going out? And then I'm really strict about like what's the official agenda and such. Is it worth my time? So go out.
Okay.
Just go out and meet people.
Okay. Thanks for making it to the end. Thank you for the talk, and see you next Monday.